In this video, we're going to take a look at using the mask generators. So here I just have this Mesh Adaptive SBS loaded here. And in this project, I already have this stairs mesh just imported. And I've already baked some maps here. So you'll notice that I have a curvature map baked and a world space normals. Here I have a position. And here is the actual normal map itself. And then finally here we have an ambient occlusion map. And like I said, I've already baked these by just right-clicking the mesh and choosing Bake Model Information. And then here just choosing the bakes that I need. So that step has already been done. And so now what we're going to do is how we can utilize these maps here to work with these specific mask generators. So let's start by first just building up our material. Now, in this example, I already have a graph here called stairs, which is going to represent this kind of concrete that I need here for my steps. So I'm just going to instance this here into my graph. So just left click and drag and drop stairs into my graph. Now you'll notice that I'm in material mode. And here, if I just tap 1 on the keyboard, it expands all my channels. And we can see that I'm working with base color, normal, rough, metal, and ambient occlusion. So here I'll just hit 3 on the keyboard once more just to collapse those channels into a full material. Okay, now we have this material. If I just right click and just drag and drop this here into the 3D view, I can just quickly apply this material to the mesh just so that we can get an idea of what this base material looks like. And notice that I haven't actually connected it to my outputs. So what we're going to do is add some kind of secondary effects here. So what I like to refer to this as we're going to basically blend another material, which is going to be like a dirt layer on top of these steps. And we're going to do that by utilizing these mask generators. And I'm also going to use a material filter that's called the material color blend to, well, handle the blending for me. So let's take a look at how this works. So here in the mask generators, I'm just going to take a look here and find this dirt generator. And this is what we're going to start with. So let's just left click and drag and drop this here into our graph. Now let's zoom in here on the node and you'll notice that we have 2 inputs, mesh data and mask. So I'm in material mode, so I can't really see what these channels are because it's collapsed. So let's do this. Let's have the node selected and well, you don't actually need it selected. I'm just going to hit 1 on the keyboard and it'll expand the channels. And you'll notice here that we have several inputs that we can work with. Curvature, ambient occlusion, world space, normal, and position. And notice that the world space, normal, and position have this yellow input, which indicate that it needs RGB value. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook in some maps that's going to control this generator. So notice that, if I just double click this guy, we're viewing it here in the 2D view. It's pure white. So the idea that we're going to be creating here with this mask generator is that, well, we're going to be generating a mask that's going to kind of drive this effect. Again, this dirt that we're creating that we're going to basically blend over top of our concrete. So the first thing I need to do is just feed in these inputs. So I already have these guys, like I said, baked. So here's curvature. So we got our curvature. Let's just plug that in here into the input. Next up, we need our ambient occlusion. So I'm going to grab that map here and just drag and drop that in. Now, notice this comes in as color. So I just want to make sure that I just click the grayscale button here. And let's just use that as grayscale information. And next up, we have world space normals. So here's that map baked. Let's bring this guy in and then just simply connect it. And then finally here we have this position. So here's the position map. Bring it here into my graph, and then we'll just make this connection. Now that I have this set up, I'm just going to hit 3 on the keyboard just to kind of collapse all these inputs here together. So here are the maps that we're going to be using. This is basically the mesh data. Now we call it mesh data because it's just actually maps that were baked from the mesh. Now, you can also use these generators without having to bake a map. So let's say that you're working on a procedural material and you don't even have a mesh that you baked maps from. Well, you can create curvature and AO that you could use for a generator such as this dirt by just using some of the nodes that we have. So for instance, let's say that I have my normal map and I want to create curvature. I could just start to type in curvature and choose the curvature node, and also, I could just start to search for my ambient occlusion node here and generate ambient occlusion. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be maps that I baked. Also, I don't have to have these two maps here. So these maps are also going to help create this effect because it's going to utilize basically these maps as input as the generator basically, decides where it's going to put this mask effect. But we can get away with doing this with just curvature and ambient occlusion. So just a point to consider there. But in our case, we have these baked maps, and we're going to utilize this in this computation here of this mask. So at this stage, we have our generator pretty much set up. If I double click now, and we take a look here in the 2D view, you can see that, well, we've generated some type of mask here. So here is our default material. Let's put this guy up here towards the top. So now what we want to do is we want to blend this default material, and we want to blend it utilizing this mask. And so to do that, I'm going to come over here to my material filters. I'm going to go to blending, and I'm going to use this material color blend node. So let's just drag and drop and place this here into my graph. Just to make sure that you understand, this generator, it is just creating this mask, and we could use this mask in other ways. But in the case of being able to use this mask to place dirt, we need to use another node, such as this material color blend, to create another material. Now, if we had another material, let's say that just as I had with this stairs concrete, I had another graph that was dirt. Well, I could bring that in, and then I could just use a material blend. So here, let's take a look at that material blend. Notice that it's going to blend two materials, 1 and 2, based on a grayscale mask. Well, we know our grayscale mask is generated here by the mask generator. So that's another way to work. But in my case, I don't actually have a dirt material. So the material color blend is going to let me define that material here in the instance parameters for the dirt. So the first thing that you need to do is just come over here to these channels. We want to make sure that we have this set up. So by default, all of the channels are enabled for spec gloss and metal rough, and we're not using spec gloss, so we just want to disable these channels. So diffuse, I'm going to turn that off. Specular, glossiness, and my ambient occlusion I want to set to true, and my height I'm going to set to false because, well, I don't have any height, but I do have ambient occlusion. So now I have this set up. So let's take our material here, our base material, and just plug that here into the material input slot. All right, so that's going to be our base. And now when we take a look at our parameters, notice that, well, I have channels here. Again, the channels that I have enabled, I have channel parameters that I can use. And I'm going to use these parameters to define my dirt material. So now let's take the mask generated from our mask generator and plug this here into the grayscale input. So now we have that in place. And just so that we can really see what we're doing, let's take our outputs and just plug these over here to the actual outputs here of our graph. And then I'm going to right click and choose View Outputs in 3D View. So here's what we get. So something's happening. We're getting some mixing, but it really looks terrible. So we need to change the parameters. And like I said, what we're going to do now is use this material color blend to define that dirt material. So let's start here channel by channel. Let's go into our base color. So, well, it's white by default, and that's where we're getting all of this white. Now, this is dirt, so kind of want it to be like this dark brown kind of color. So let's just do something like this. And now that I have this color, I'm actually going to change the blending mode. I'm just going to change this to multiply so we kind of pick up some of the value from the color that's represented here in the base color of our stairs. And I can also just kind of drop this opacity down. So, I'm just defining what that dirt material's base color is going to be. Next up, we're going to come over here to our normal. Now, so that we can more clearly see this, let's just hit 1 on the keyboard to kind of expand our channels. And let's double click the output here of our normal. So I'll zoom in and you can see that, well, we have the normal that's coming from our base material. So here you can see that the source for the normal is set to height. Well, we don't have any height, so essentially the dirt is not producing any normal information. However, if I set this source here to mask, notice now all of a sudden, I'll zoom in a little closer so we can see it, we're getting a lot of detail here in our normal map. And that means that the mask, which again here is our mask generator, it's being utilized to generate normal information. So here I could do that, and then I could just decrease the height intensity of that just to kind of lower it so it's, again, not so intense. Maybe I'll do that. So let's just, lower this value down a bit. I could also adjust the opacity if I wanted to. So now we've added some normal information there for our dirt. Next up, we're going to come over here to roughness. Now, in our case, I want it to be, full white or rough, so we can just leave that alone. Our metallic, we want to be black because dirt's not metallic. Let's just double click and notice, okay, well, yeah, the metallic channel is black, so we're good to go there. Finally, let's take a look at our ambient occlusion and see what we have. So here we have our ambient occlusion, and it's set to white, and that means that the dirt is starting to occlude some of these areas, and that's what I want there as well. So at this stage, we've been able to come in and take this dirt, which is being generated here from our mask generator, and we've used this material color blend to essentially create a dirt material based on its base color, normal, rough, metal, and ambient occlusion channels. We've set those up. And now we're just outputting everything here to our main graph outputs. So now that we have this set up, I can now go back to the mask generator itself and start to just kind of tweak these values. So for example, my dirt level, well, it might be a little high. So let's pull this value down. So we'll get something like this. Now, what's really cool is you can see that the white areas is where we're going to be placing the dirt. So a lot of this dirt is starting to just, well, gather in kind of these occluded areas like the cracks and right here at the kind of the base part of these steps. So here I could come in and just add a little bit more grunge amount to this. And so here we'll get something like that. And I think that's giving me kind of more of that kind of subtle dirt effect that I'm actually kind of looking for in this case. And so there you see that we're just simply utilizing this dirt generator here underneath our mesh adaptive mask generators to create this mask that we're then propagating to the channels here in this material color blend to create this dirt material. So now let's just extend this a bit further and let's add another mask generator. So I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to grab this one here called ground dirt. So let's just drag and drop and place this here into our graph. And we'll just zoom in and you'll notice that this one here takes just a position input, but however, it's just gray. So if we take a look at our position map, you'll notice that it's color, so it's RGB. And what this position map equates to is RGB meaning X, Y, Z. So we're talking about positional data there. And so what this ground dirt's actually looking for is a single axis of that position data. So we could choose the X, Y, or Z axis. And what I would like to do, it being ground dirt, place some dirt along the Y axis here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and I could do one of two things. I could bake another map. So I could just right click and choose bake model information. And I could come in here and choose my position map and rebake another map. However, since I already have this data here, so here on my bitmap, what I'm going to do is use a channel shuffle node to isolate the green data out of this image. So I'll hit the space bar and I'll do a search for channel shuffle and we'll take the output and we'll just place it right here into input 1. And so here, what we're going to do for the red, green, blue channels, we're just going to set all this to the green channel. So here we'll choose green. For the green, we want green, and for the blue, we want the green channel as well. And then for the alpha channel, it doesn't matter since we don't have one. And so here you can see that, well, we're getting the green channel information, which is going to represent the Y axis. And so here's what we have. Now, notice this is still color, so I'm going to hit the space bar again, and I'm going to use this grayscale conversion node. So what I did was I just hit the G key. It just starts to filter, and grayscale conversion's right here at the top. So we're going to use that. And so we'll plug this in, and now we have this grayscale map, which is going to become our position. Now, the reason I did that again, instead of just baking this, is that just a little bit more optimized. Instead of adding a whole nother map to this, it just pulled the channel information. I already had it here in my color position map. So now we'll take this and we'll just plug this here into the position. And so when I double click, now you can see the type of mass that's being generated for us. So what we want to do here again is use our material color blend because again, I don't have a dirt material that I want to use for this ground. So what I'm going to do in this case is just again use a material color blend to create a channel or create a set of material on the fly based on the channel properties I set up. So what I could do, since on this channel I already have, everything indicated here that I need enabled and all this stuff, I'm just going to just select this and hit Control D to just duplicate it. And it already has my base material connected. So what I want to do though is I'm going to delete both of these inputs here. And I'm going to take here the input from my material blend, and I'm going to plug this guy in. So we're basically just starting to kind of chain these guys together. And so now we're going to take our mask here for our ground dirt and we'll place this in. And then finally, we'll take the output of this material color blend and just pass that to the outputs of our graph. And so here when you do that, since we're basically just copy and pasted this material color blend, which the channels are already set up to kind of mimic that dirt material, you'll notice here that now we're getting more dirt just here on the bottom. So let's go back over here to our ground dirt and we can adjust this level parameter here. So you can see that as I start to pull the level down, it's basically, pushing that dirt towards the bottom. So again, the dirt's only collecting towards the bottom. And again, as I move this up, here, let me come in and just undo this transparency so we can see this mask. We're basically just overdriving the effect. Now, we actually have a dirt height setting that's going to do this as well. So notice here that as I pull the dirt height down, this is the control that's actually being able to push this information basically up and down that y-axis as indicated by this position map that we're using. So here we have it selected, and I'm going to set probably my dirt height a little low. And then I can start to increase the level here so we get more dirt, but then push that dirt value down towards the bottom like this. So here's what we get, something more in this nature. Now, if we wanted to, we could actually maybe change this. Let's just select this guy here and go back to our base color. And let's try just experimenting here. Let's make this like a green. We'll select our color picker and make kind of like a darker kind of green like this. And here I'm just kind of increasing the opacity. Let me go back here to my normal and just increasing that height intensity so we get kind of more of that normal information. Now I'm going to come back to my roughness and start to drop this. So now it's going to be, have a bit more of a specular kind of shiny effect to this. Here, let's go back to that base color again. Maybe that's too dark. Let's just lighten it up just a little bit here. Something like that. And then here, we'll come back to that ground dirt and maybe start to try to increase this contrast. Do something like this. So yeah, just kind of playing around, and I could just, try to come up with an effect of that's more like a moss. Instead of it being a dirt, it's more of like a moss effect. So basically what you're seeing here is that, we use these mask generators to, generate a mask, and then that mask can be used to help blend materials. We can do that by using the material color blend. The main trick to this is that, it takes the mask as input and then allows us to define a material through these channel parameters. Or, like I said, if we have a material that we've already created, another substance graph, let's say, I could just use a material blend and blend it that way. And so when I kind of chain these two material color blends together, you can see that I'm able to, basically just blend a dirt material that we have here. And then here on top of that, we're now blending in a kind of like a moss material that's also being driven by another dirt generator. So one last thing just to kind of discuss about these generators is that they have this kind of optional mask input. And so what you can do with that here, just to kind of demonstrate it, let me just come over here to a pattern. Let's just try something like this checker here. And I'll just plug this in. And so here you can see that all that's doing is it's just supplying here another way to kind of mask, this mask. So the generator's creating a mask, but then we can have like a secondary kind of like, and we call it the optional mask to help further kind of define where this effect is going to show up on the model. So all of the generators have that. So the main key to understanding the generators is that they're all going to have some type of input that's going to be driven by what we call mesh adaptive information. So it's either going to be things like curvature, ambient occlusion, world space normal position, and so on. And so all of the generators that we have work just the same as we've demonstrated here. It's just the only difference being that, there might be different types of maps that you supply, as you saw here. So with our dirt, we had this set of maps, and then with this ground dirt, we had, a position map, but it was wanting a specific axis here. And we supplied that by just kind of channel shuffling the green channel or the y-axis out of our RGB position map. And so that's how you use the mask generators here in Substance Designer.